Good morning. A warm welcome on this rather chilly Jaipuri morning. We are here to discuss a very contentious subject, and I want you all to pitch in. If you've got a question, we'll get a mic to you, and so please pitch in. Dance like a man. Now, isn't that a completely sexist title to begin with? How do you dance like a man? Would one of you like to show me? Shobhaa, would you like to show us how you dance like a man?
Well, I'd be happy to, but I'm not Salman Khan, so it's a bit difficult. But I think in popular imagination, particularly in the subcontinent, dance like a man would be a really aggressive bump and grind routine, but performed by a man with a six-pack. So it's not about what's inside your head, it's what's below the belt. And the more you thrust it into public view, the more masculine you're considered. And I guess that's really what is happening today, which is seen across the board at public weddings, public functions, wherever there are Bollywood tracks playing, everybody wants to dance like Salman or Akshay or Shah Rukh. And that's what dance like a man actually has come to connote in our society. But if you ask me seriously what it means be yourself and dance the dance of your life in the manner that suits you, without thinking of gender, without saying, am I dancing like a man, am I dancing like a woman? You're dancing because you want to dance and you want to share your joy, and gender is really irrelevant at that point. That's what it means to me.
Precisely. Tell me one thing. A curious question here. In more traditional societies, men dance very unself-consciously. They get up the moment the music is on at any wedding or at any function. As society gets more economically prosperous, shall I say, or more westernized, men become shy and they withdraw. Why is this? Christo, would you like to take that one?
I was just when...
oh, sorry. You have something to add to Shobhaa's?
No, it does. It follows on from both Shobhaa's comments and your question. I think because I've grown up in Australia, so I was born and raised in a very Western privileged place. But because my family were migrants from a place called Greece, when you were talking about dancing, I learned to dance from 3 years old, and there would be big parties. I learned to dance to Greek music, and I continue to go back to dancing as a certain freedom. I feel like if I am in the music, I am probably the freest that I ever am. So I imagine it's the same experience for a woman dancing. Absolutely. I don't think it's about gender. Having said that, I do think that there is a self-consciousness about masculinity in Anglo culture in Australia that I notice. So a lot of my friends don't have that comfort in dance. So I feel it's because I came from a traditional space. My parents were rural migrants where dance and music was part of the culture, that I was able to feel that, or am able to feel that freedom in dance.
So does the change occur, or did the change occur when you moved from one culture to another, or is it more the economic prosperity that makes men somehow sort of less conscious or less able to express themselves?
Man, that's such a big question. I think that with economic prosperity comes a change to the notion of the family, to the notion of community. So when I was growing up, I lived with 3 families. Mm-hmm. When I was growing up, I knew everyone in my community. When I was growing up, my parents worked in factories that were 3 minutes walk from the house. I knew everyone on the street. We all danced together, we all communicated together. Now, with more money and more material wealth, people are much more isolated from each other. The opportunities to congregate are less. Where you congregate are at clubs, at bars. The music is one sort of music. The dance is one sort of dance, and it doesn't have that communal element. That's not to say, I was in the back section before and some hip hop was playing. I love dancing to hip hop. Yeah. But I think the freedom I have comes from that, being fortunate enough when I was younger to find a freedom in dance that I think would have been difficult if I'd grown up in a more prosperous world, environment.
Yeah, so it is something to do with the economics of it, as much as
yes, in terms of why it's more difficult for Anglo men than Anglo women to dance. That's, I'm still trying to work out that question.
Well, maybe the audience can help us out with that one later on. Why is it that Anglo-Saxon men find it difficult to express themselves? I hope there aren't too many Anglo-Saxons here. I hope we outnumber them. Mukul, author of so many bestsellers, who just whispered to me in the author's lounge that his latest book, 100,000 copies, that made me intensely jealous. Now your readers, Mukul, are they all action-packed action men? Because your books are kind of rugged and people run around and shoot each other. How would they react to you being on this stage talking about dancing like a man?
You know, I'm not sure how they would react, but I would like to share with you guys how I reacted when I got this title. I was pretty confused for several reasons. One, I don't dance. I have 2 left feet and I cannot for the life of me dance. The second was, I couldn't quite put a handle on this title, Refiguring Masculinity. It confused the hell out of me. And then I got worried because I thought, if this title is so important to be on such a prestigious panel, why have I not been thinking about it? I was really upset, and since that day I've been thinking about it very hard. So finally, I think last night I figured it out with some help from Kingfisher. You know, I was thinking about this, and why do I need to dance like a man, or dance like anything for that matter? Why do I need to refigure my confidentiality? And I came up with 2 really simple things. You know, I lost my dad when I was 3, so I was brought up by a mother. And she was a very amazingly resilient and confident person. And then later on, I brought up 2 girls on my own. So for me, women have always signified these 2 or 3 things: confidence, resilience, and a lot of gentleness. So I guess that when I actually came up with these 2 things last night, I figured that I'm quite happy with my masculinity the way it is, and I don't want to refigure it. But for those of you guys here, I'm sure we will have a lot of profound thoughts and help you to refigure yours. But that's just me.
Shobhaa, you wanted to add something to this?
Well, I think dance like a man is not to be taken literally. It's a metaphor.
Yeah, I got that.
It's not about whether you actually go up there and dance on a stage, whether you have 2 left feet or you don't. It's going beyond that on many levels. And refiguring is not such a bad idea. Sometimes we need to ask ourselves a few tough questions to which we may not always have the right response, the right answers. But I think also Dance Like a Man, which is a very popular play in India, has more to do with the classical dance traditions, where, for example, a Bharatanatyam dancer, a man who's a Bharatanatyam dancer, faces a special kind of challenge that young girls also growing up in that tradition may not face. Similarly, unless you're Baryshnikov in the ballet world too. I mean, there's a whole controversy right now about a Russian dancer, male, whose thighs are judged for not being graceful enough to make it as a star performer, as a ballet star. So these are questions that trouble society over and over again. And I believe really very strongly that we've all grown up, I'm sure, having heard of the Ardhanareshwar concept, which is half man, half woman. It's, thank you, Perumal Murugan, for reminding us about it, and God bless you for saying it. The half man, half woman, through our scriptures, through mythology, through temple sculptures, have always reminded us about the duality which exists in everybody. I mean, I feel very much a macho man when I need to, as much as I feel a woman when I need to. And I don't see any contradiction at all. And I'm sure for a lot of men too, there are times when they connect with something within them which may be labeled feminine by society, but that duality is something we should all cherish, we should celebrate, we should love. and be in touch with and not deny, because we want to prove something to the world that, oh, I'm so comfortable being a man, or I'm so entirely comfortable being a woman, because different points in your life, there is self-doubt. And as long as we can table that self-doubt and deal with it, I think that's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I think that was very well put. Because, you know, for me, that's exactly, she said it so well. I was very happy getting cards on Mother's Day as well as on Father's Day. It just went perfectly well. It never made me feel confused about who I am. It perfectly complemented the whole thing. Thank you so much, Shobhaa.
Christo, you'd like to add something to this?
It's something that I often say. The best advice, because we're writers on this panel, that's why we're here. The best advice I got when I started off as a writer is, and I think it came from Virginia Woolf, that you have to be bisexual. And that isn't about who you sleep with, it's about how you think. That you have to think you are not going to be any good as a writer if you can't think within the feminine and if you can't think within the masculine. That's and I think that is crucial to what we all do in our fiction. I would, Mukul, in terms of the refiguring masculinity, to me has been part of my work from the beginning. I think I had to do that because you were talking about losing your father and the world of women. I think for so much part of my writing life, and I was very, very conscious of the restrictions placed on my mother as a woman in this incredibly intelligent, bright, vivacious, highly political, highly argumentative woman who had never had the opportunity of education. And I think all of you on the subcontinent would understand this. The reason she left Greece was she was the youngest woman in a country that still had the dowry system. So there was no way she could find an opportunity to assert an independence in her life. So that feminism was crucial to me from the beginning. At the same time, as a gay man, I was trying to work out how to be masculine in a traditional culture that didn't feel like it had the space for asserting a masculinity that I wanted to. And because I grew up in the Christian faith, and the monotheistic religions don't have that wonderful transgender element to the deity that I've been finding here, I didn't have that possibility in my life. So and I think one of the things about masculinity for me is rage. You know, I've been trying to learn how to control rage, how to control violence. I think that's why it's been important for me to try to reconfigure masculinity. I can only talk about Australia, that's the place I know. One thing that worries me about masculinity in Australia at the moment is I owe so much as well to my father, who taught me certain things about how to be an honourable man. And I think that I worry that that relationship between father and son, which is difficult and hard, you know, it is difficult, but for me it's also been the site of such great tenderness that I worry that relationship, we're losing something in that relationship. But that's back in my home.
Shobhaa, you, apart from being a best-selling writer and a columnist with a huge readership, you are more and more becoming known as a social commentator on TV, etc. So you are probably possibly more in touch with young people today than any of us. Are things changing? Are young people figuring things out more now than they used to, or is it plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose? I mean, everything staying the same.
No plus ça change at all. I feel they are redefining their roles within society and doing it on their own terms, which is really fantastic and should be applauded. They are no longer trapped. They're not in the grids that their parents and grandparents created for them. They are deciding they can go back and forth. They don't have to conform to anything, not even sexually well-defined options and choices. There's much more freedom. When I hear them speak to one another, for example, the kind of openness with which they discuss fairly ambiguous, but at the same time very important to the young, the issues that confront them, whether it's within family, within community, within society at large, within themselves, with each other. I find there is a really rewarding sense of self-questioning going on. Now, maybe for my generation, we were brought up with such strong stereotypes. It was so patriarchal in its thinking. I mean, if you were a woman, you were the nurturer, you were the future wife, the future mother, the future grandmother, and that is how you would bring up your daughters. There was no talk of ever discussing sexuality with your parents, never, and even less of discussing your perhaps ambiguities about sexuality. I don't think a young boy in today's circumstances would think twice, well maybe he'd think twice, but he'd still not feel that terrible about going and talking to his parents about an alternative way of life. To say that I believe I want to try something else which society doesn't approve of, and I am gay. Now in the past, the mother may have said to herself, this is the end, doomed. She may have even forced him into marrying someone, a woman, so that society wouldn't criticize the family, wouldn't talk about it. I think there's much, much more acceptance. The acceptance is being pushed and driven by the young, and God bless them for that. Because without that, they are the ones who are setting the pace, who are telling society, telling family, telling community that it's our privilege, it's our time now, and we will decide and we will choose. So that choice, which they have in many sense appropriated, is going to be a huge social change in India, and it's something that we should all really be applauding, because there's just so much more honesty in that than living a lie, which for centuries we've been compelled to do because no one dared to break the rules. More and more young people are daring to break the rules, and good for them, because they'll just be happier within, and if they're happier within, they'll just be able to function much better within society at large without fear of being. Of course, we are dealing with a law which all of us here, I'm sure, will rightly be agitating against repealing. But till that happens, being gay in our society is still considered a crime. And till that changes, even those brave young people may not be able to come out in the numbers that they could if our laws were more accepting.
Mukul, tell me, you who can't dance, is there such a thing as a metrosexual? Or is that concept dead now? Explain to me.
Well, okay. I will begin by first saying that I don't normally have very profound thoughts. I'm a very simple guy. But I do think there is a metrosexual, and that is a person who's learned to balance the duality within. And the duality is essential for us, because like both of them said, that you need this sometimes, you need that sometimes. So I do think there is a metrosexual, and in my mind there should be more and more of them. They're quite helpful and useful to get things moving forward.
Yeah, so you don't think it's just some sort of artificial construct of the press or of other thinkers?
I think that, of course, it's generated by something called media, you know, and that, of course, it's generated by the media. But at the same time, I think it was trying to make sense of changes that were happening to how you define masculinity. That, you know, that you could both be sensitive and be a man. That you could dance and be a man. Listening on to what you were saying, Shobhaa, and just thinking about the question of asserting your independence, and I think metrosexuality is part of that, asserting the independence. What I'm very conscious of is that society is not even. So something called, and again I can only speak for Australia, but maybe it has a relationship to a lot of other places as well, is that metrosexuality was more acceptable within a kind of bourgeois middle class world, or it's more urban, it's cosmopolitan. Where it's still difficult is outside the urban cosmopolitan centre, and I imagine that's part of the struggle. Of course it must be in a place like India as well, and that's where I don't think we're all metrosexuals. I think that there's a real struggle, legal, social, cultural, to come, not only for queer people, but for all of us,
Yes.
you know, who want more equal relationships between men and women.
I think the metrosexual was actually a term invented more or less by the fashion industry. So it is very urban and it is very niche and it is almost elite in what it's saying. I mean, you can't talk about metrosexuals to 90% of India, they wouldn't even know what it means. 99% wouldn't understand the meaning. But the more worrying aspect of redefining masculinity in our context, in our social milieu, is equating masculinity or the display of masculinity with violence against women. Now that is something we need to be much more concerned about, because in our society that is how it is being viewed. To be masculine is to be able to attack a woman, a defenseless woman, and a lot of what we are dealing with today, the rape cases and so on, most of them are an expression of incredible amount of rage. You mentioned rage earlier. It's rage that's suppressed. It's some sort of an anger that's being displayed in various contexts, not just in rural India, but increasingly in urban India.
And why this rage?
Now again, you see, the popular culture, as seen through our films and movies, particularly in Bollywood, from the word go, has equated masculinity with a certain lack of respect for women. And that has been condoned for generations of moviegoers who have said that is chhed-chad. It's like Eve teasing, which is a nasty word because it just covers a lot of really serious crime and unpleasantness. So that is getting endorsed in different ways, whether it's through our Bollywood songs, mainly through songs and popular culture as depicted in Bollywood. And when that translates into street violence against women, urban crime against women, that is the worrying part. Because when, for example, when I was editing Stardust way back when, we had, I'm guilty, coined words like garam dharam. Now what did garam dharam mean? He's a guy who's on top of his sexuality. He's a guy who doesn't answer to society. He's a guy who can go get any woman he wants. That was the subliminal, the subtext of descriptions of that kind. So when you're calling someone a hottie, a hot star, you are sexualizing them, and in a way you are giving them a social sanction to display what is popularly known as masculinity. When that translates into violence, that's when society has to really step back and ask itself what masculinity actually means. And do we need a film like Mardani, where a woman, Rani Mukherjee, playing a terrific role of a cop who assumes a masculine role, who becomes a mardan, who becomes a man. Now, why should women be forced into becoming men in order to assert themselves or protect themselves? So the whole concept of even when it happened in Maggie Thatcher's time, the only man in the cabinet, it happened with Indira Gandhi, the only man in the cabinet. So you're equating power with men. And that has not broken still. So many centuries later, we are still talking about power equals men. So therefore, in a way, violence equals men too. That is the fear that we should really be addressing much more strongly than whether one can dance like a man or not dance like a man.
Has that violence, the last time we were on this stage 2 years ago, we discussed the rape, the horrific rape and attack in the subway. Has the violence decreased? You were saying that young people are now more embracing their sexuality, being more free to be their natural selves. Has that violence come down at all?
It hasn't, and that's a tragic comment to be making. If anything, statistics establish that it has gone up. Brilliant. So we really need to stop dead in our tracks and figure out why that is happening.
And I would like to come back to what Shobhaa just said. It's very relevant. You know, my company does a lot of leadership training with women leaders across the world. And I just wanted to narrate this incident to highlight how deep that problem has gone. There was a bank which gave us a group of 25 ladies, all identified high performers, and they were to be groomed for the highest level. Now the first day, I asked these ladies to draw the picture of the ideal CEO. Now can you imagine 25 ladies, hand-picked, smart, educated, working for a multinational bank. 25 minutes later, all 25 had put up their drawings on the walls.
All men.
And they were all men.
Yep.
Not a single one of those ladies had drawn a lady. It was amazing. And then I asked them, I said, please take a look around. And what does it tell you? Until you see something happening in your head, it will not happen on ground. Because reality begins here. We have to see that first. It was so eye-opening for them. It just changed the...
Is this also the reason? Now, this is a really contentious bit. In the arts, particularly, in painting, literature, sculpture, music, and so on, the most applauded, I will use the word applauded, not greatest, but the most applauded, the most idolized artists have been men. Now, is this to do with a historical thing where men have been allowed to practice the arts and women not? Or is there something more to it? Shobhaa, over to you.
I would sum it up in one sentence. It's a question of opportunity, not gender. And women did not have those opportunities earlier. They have them now. So perhaps 10 years down the line, we'll see a different scenario in the arts. Other than that, I don't think there's any deep-rooted conspiracy against women to keep them out of the arts. I don't believe so. It's just a question of women allowed to step out of their homes and hearts to express themselves in the first place. In our society, that has been a fairly recent phenomenon. And women are grabbing those opportunities and doing brilliantly whenever they're given that opportunity. Yeah.
And Christo, many of those artists are gay or were. Does that change the equation at all?
Well, to actually be an artist, to be a writer, to take it seriously, to do the work, you know, there is a period of either you have to have income that is going to support you in what you do, or otherwise you are going to have to make certain decisions about the way you live, that you may have to forego a house, you may have to forego certain economic opportunities. I think in the past, if you were a woman, that you may have to forego motherhood, for example. All these, there's nothing more I can add. It's all about opportunity. Yeah. And that's why I don't think there has been, historically, women represented in the arts. But that's also why you don't get working class people represented in the arts, because there hasn't been the opportunity. I think that is the most important shift in terms of culture. I was just really quickly, when I was listening to you both, years ago I thought I'd be a school teacher, and I realised I was too selfish because I wanted to write. And I think to be a good school teacher, that has to be your vocation. But I felt really fortunate I went to a co-educational school. I think the girls saved my life, really. But working in some of the schools, and I was working in very, very harsh areas, obviously not like here, but in Australia, in Melbourne. And I thought for a period, between the years level 8 and level 9, I would separate the boys and the girls, because what I saw was the boys required a certain discipline that you needed to work on, and with the girls, the smarter they were, the less they wanted to show it in front of the boys. And this is in a country like Australia with a long history of feminism, with a long history of economic privilege. And just really quickly, I remember working on a play about young people and going out to schools and asking young women who were very well read, really smart, eager to come out in the world, what was the word that most harmed them? What was the worst insult they could receive? And it was slut.
Slut.
It was still, that was the definition of a woman who put her hand up, who put her head up, who took opportunity. And that hasn't changed. That was the worst insult when I was a young boy. And that's a long time ago now.
Nothing's changed.
Now, as women advance and take over those top jobs and push forward their case and take their rightful place, are men suffering a crisis? Are men suddenly feeling insecure?
Are you guys feeling insecure? No, I'm not. I'm okay. How about you, Christos?
I don't know. I'm not feeling insecure, but I do think that there is, I think there are shifts happening. There are such enormous shifts happening.
I mean, could this explain the violence?
Yes,
in
I mean,
other words,
I think
the rage.
I think aggression has unfortunately, in so many cultures, been part of the way masculinity has been defined. But we are all in a historic moment called globalization, which is changing everything about all our lives, all our countries, all our communities. And I do think that there is an element of the rage that is about fear. And a fear, and change is also scary and frightening and destructive. So I think that is part of what we're experiencing. Again, I can only talk about my space because that's the space I know. That thing I said earlier about it's not the authority of the father, but it's the presence of the father that I worry about. Because when I was talking about those young boys in high school.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding you. I would say 3/4 in one particular school did not have a father figure.
Yes.
You can have two mothers, but they didn't have father figures, and I worry about that because there's certain things I learnt about how to express what it meant to be a man, what it meant to control my aggression that I learned from my father.
But
Shobhaa,
Ashok, for a lot of people of our previous generation, the worst you talked about, the worst thing you could say to a woman would be to call her a slut. It hasn't changed. But the worst thing to say to a little boy in an environment which is a mixed environment would be stop behaving like a sissy. Now, sissy was the worst put down, and most men suffered from that. If, for example, their mother had ever said that to them strongly, that don't cry, don't behave like a sissy, or their father said you're behaving like a sissy, it stayed. It was like a permanent wound that they never really came to terms with. So till we start breaking down these kind of boxes and stereotypes, we use words carelessly in the presence of our children. And those words stick, and often they stick for life.
Yes.
So you're fighting that and a lot of energy goes towards dealing with a word like sissy or a word like slut, which is a huge pressure on a young person, and sometimes it never leaves them. So even in, I think, societies across the world, how we define masculinity and how we define femininity, and whether we need to actually deconstruct all of it in a way that makes life more comfortable for everybody. And insecurity per se is not a bad thing. I think an insecure man will maybe perhaps become a better man, and an insecure woman will ask herself a lot of questions and maybe become a better woman. So insecurity, particularly in societies that tend to be complacent and smug, is a prerequisite for change. So I'm all for insecurity. I definitely think it's an attribute and not a weakness. It's not something we need to be apologetic about. Insecurity is the trigger for a lot of us to be doing what we do. Insecurity in the creative field, I would say, is the biggest motivation for a writer, for anybody, cinema, for a poet. Insecurity works wonderfully well.
I think that.
Why is it, do you think, that now, I think we've fairly established that in these Western countries, women do get a better chance than in our part of the world here, where we're still fighting for women to get their position under the sun. Yet, we tend to lead the way with women leaders. I mean, we all South Asian countries, many of them, Sri Lanka, India, Pakistan, have had women leaders. Why this sort of reversal of things? Why do you think that is?
I don't mind going first here.
Yes.
Well, I think most of the leaders in Southeast Asia who are women were there initially actually through default. They were either widows or they were daughters. They were seen as victims who needed to be compensated for an assassination or a premature death. And it was just what was called a sympathy wave that saw them reach those positions. It didn't always keep them in those positions, which is the interesting thing, because at the end of the day, it was about proving yourself, it was about merit. You can get that opportunity, but to hang on to that opportunity, you need something more than sympathy to keep you there as a leader. But Ashok, I wouldn't entirely agree with you where you say women in the Western world are better off. I don't think so at all. In fact, the pressures on them are so pronounced and so defined that you have books like Lean In, which tell you how much a woman needs to compromise in order to hang on to a corporate job. You have an Indra Nui who is talking about what it means to be a corporate icon who happens to be a woman, and the kind of compromises she has had to make to conform. And most of the yardsticks, the defining rules of the game are written primarily to they're not inclusive at all. The reference points continue to be male leadership, whether in the political sphere or the corporate world. So till that becomes slightly more equal and inclusive, I don't think whether it's women in the West or women in India or women anywhere are going to see a better deal or a more equal or a more level playing field. We need to change that to start with. And that, as Mukul pointed out, that change has to begin, it's a mindset, it has to begin inside the head. And even when it comes to masculinity, it's what you feel within, it's what's happening inside your head, or femininity, rather than what you're actually putting out there and displaying to the world. So that internal transformation, I think we are still a long way off from getting there, but that we are getting there, I'm almost certain we are.
With your corporate training, do you ban pictures of men, and so that
No, but I would like to mention this, you know, when we talk about domestic violence, I personally work with domestic violence victims in Southeast Asia, and the statistics in the so-called developed nations are not much better than what they are here. Domestic violence is not something which is restricted to the Indian subcontinent. Yeah. I personally know very extreme cases in very developed countries, which I would not like to name here, but this is a very widespread thing, and I completely agree with Shobhaa that it has nothing to do with a particular country or in the West that they have more options. We need to create this space, and we need to stop looking at people in terms of race, color or gender. We need to first see them as people. Until that happens in our own heads, it's not going to make any change whatsoever. So as writers, as a writer, when I write, for those of you who've read my last 2 or 3 books, my women protagonists are as strong, confident and successful as anybody else, and they are not compromising, they are holding their own. I give permission for them to do whatever I think anybody else would do, not man or woman. They're just people first. So that's what I believe.
Question time, darling.
Yes. Time now for some questions. If we have some mics here, please put your hand up. There's a girl right here, front row.
What I've generally noticed is that when we're talking about gender and sexuality, there's always this question of what is natural and what is unnatural. So you talked about the idea of the Ardhnareshwar, and that's considered to be composite of the male element and the female element. Do you feel that there is anything essential about the male and the female element, or is that all socially constructed?
Well, I think mutual strengths are what make a complete whole. And that's what, to me, Ardhnareshwar depicted, is the feminine strength and the male strength together making a composite. And to me, it's a very inspiring figure.
There's a question here, second row, lady in the orange.
Thank you, Ashok. Thank you. This was an excellent discussion. What bothered me a little bit, though, was that we could be having this discussion 10 years ago. The questions and the answers and the tenor of the discussion is exactly the same. My question to this eminent panel is, how are we going to look forward? All of you have said we have to start thinking, we have to start doing. How do we move forward in that direction? Because the bothersome part is that where are we stuck that we are not being able to make the leap?
I mean, you're always cautious because it's such a good question, but such a difficult question to answer. I would say it's very, very important that education, that in the schools, but also in the homes, that's where that we have to work harder to to make these questions part of the education we get, both as children in schools, but also as children in families. And the best way to explain it from my experience, you know, because I grew up in a world with so many women who migrated who had no facility in English, you know, that they couldn't read the newspapers, they couldn't understand the news. And then I have a friend whose mother spent 35 years in Australia, moved back to her family in Greece, and suddenly in Greece she could go to a panel like this and understand the conversation. She could open up the newspaper and hear an interview with a transgendered person. She could be part of these debates. And if you don't have access to that, to the language, to the culture, things are not going to move. It's a small thing, but that's why I think education is absolutely crucial.
The girl in the black there.
Sorry, may I add to that, ma'am? Ma'am, we are stuck for the same reason that we are stuck as a country. We don't want to make the change. We want to listen to a discussion and then go home and it's business as normal. I have just day before yesterday, I'm sitting in someone's house and he's telling his son, don't cry like a girl. This is a very educated person. So it's like Shobhaa said, when you put in these thoughts in somebody who's that high, a human being does not have critical analysis till they are 7. You tell a 5-year-old kid, don't cry like a girl, he will grow up into a man who has not learned how to cry. And a man who has not learned how to cry cannot see anything beyond what is right there in front. So I think we need to change ourselves first.
Over there.
Hi. So when I read the title of this session, I immediately thought back to the Mard campaign, which is the Men Against Rape and Discrimination campaign. It was launched right after the Nirbhaya incident in 2013 in April. And I thought it was really refreshing because apart from all the campaigns about women and women empowerment, I thought it was great that someone was trying to redefine masculinity. And they talked about, you know, how men are not just aggressive, but masculinity is also about sensitivity and everything. But I think it largely failed because they kept reinforcing the stereotype of men being the protectors of women and women being either goddesses or, you know, helpless lambs that we need to protect. So how do you think that dialogue can be changed? Do you think it can be changed at all?
Well, Marth was a fantastic initiative, like you pointed out when it started. And I wouldn't say it's entirely that it's failed in totality. It did raise questions, larger questions, and it did raise awareness. That in itself is one big step forward. So let's see how it goes from this moment on. Farhan Akhtar, who was the driver behind that campaign, has since become an ambassador for women's issues. That's again a big step forward. He's an articulate, intelligent person, sensitive person. He can leverage his position to speak on behalf of men and women. And I hope he does that and makes sure that that Mard concept is taken forward in the right way.
Shobhaa, this is for you. I'm from the financial industry, and there are many forums for bankers to discuss how the financial industry and the problems with it. You mentioned Bollywood and the major impact it has on Indians. Are there forums where filmmakers are sitting together and discussing how they can change the image that they have created and solve the current situation of violence with women?
Not that I'm aware of, I'm sorry. I wish there were. They have a lot of fora. They do discuss contemporary cinema, especially when it runs into trouble. But that has mainly to do with how to get out of that trouble rather than actually think about changing and perception. Because the argument from Bollywood has always been, we give the people what they want. And so long as the movies make money, I mean, if this is what the people want, then that is clearly society's mood. And if they're not accepting of any real change, and I'm not talking about preachy message films, but I believe even a film, 2 films which I can talk about, which I think were game changers on many levels, which broke stereotypes. One was Shuddh Desi Romance, which redefined the roles of young women in a small town rather than in Mumbai alone. And the other one would be Queen. So, you know, small town India, the women from smaller, like Jaipur, that film was made in Jaipur. No longer a small town, but certainly not Mumbai and Delhi. I think the women who are pushing for that social change are women from cities like Jaipur who are more assertive, more confident, and driving that change far more significantly than anybody sitting in Mumbai or Delhi or legislating or making policy changes. It's these women who will push for change, and it will be achieved, maybe not in the next 5 years, but it will. We expect Bollywood to change. I think that's a tall, tall expectation. I don't see it happening very fast.
Hi, we have quite a lot of gender signifiers in society, some of which are more closely adhered to than others. Be it sort of women should wear skirts, men should wear trousers, women should have short hair, men should have long hair, women wear jewelry, etc. Do you think that by eking these out would sort of be quite revolutionary for sexual equality?
Mukul?
Okay. So, how do you see yourself first? Do you want to look good in the mirror? Do you have long hair because you like it? Do you wear a skirt because you like it, or because you want somebody else is expecting you to wear it?
I think it's a combination of both, being sort of societally conditioned that these are ways that would make a woman look nice, and feeling comfortable in my own skin.
So your question actually is a lot similar to the previous one. You know, arts and literature, do we, like Shobhaa said, Bollywood says we will give the people what they want. So when you look at a writer or a filmmaker, is he profiling the times, or is he doing something which will make the times change? Right? So the same way, you see yourself as a woman first, you dress accordingly, society sees you as a woman first, and that expectation sets in. It's a bit like the chicken and the egg, from where I'm looking at it.
Sir, this is my question. I would like to ask you a question about the fact that what do societal pressures and how do they prevail upon young men and women? You see, nowadays a lot of medical and surgical procedures are available, and there is an increasing tendency for people to want to change their sex. And how does that getting accepted in society and by parents in general?
Transgender.
Yes.
Hold it up.
Yes. I think that for one of the astonishing changes, because sometimes on a panel like this you come away feeling quite pessimistic because you think things haven't changed, but I think one of the astonishing changes has been that there is an increasing support for the notion that you are not necessarily born into your biological gender, that you are there's an increasing support for the idea that we have a much more fluid gender and we have much more fluid bodies. One of the ways that I have seen that transformation, and again I will go to the level of the child, I'll go to the level of school, is that at the school my nieces go to, there is a support group for the young students who feel that they don't belong, that their body does not represent the gender they belong to. That was unthinkable 30 years ago. When it would not have happened. There would have not been the space for that young person to assert themselves. So I think I think that is a wonderful change, and that is a change that has actually been led, as Shobhaa said, by young people. And I think that's what I will say.
No, I just wanted to add a little to that. It's a difficult decision. It's a difficult decision for parents. It's a difficult decision for family. It's a difficult decision for community at large. But it's the single most difficult decision the individual takes to undergo something as radical. So I think some kind of, like you said, support group is so key, because it's not just a physical change, it's an emotional change. I'd say it's a spiritual change. You're redefining your entire being as you have known it. Till that moment you take the decision to change your gender. It's a huge life transforming decision. We have to be sensitive to it. It is a very difficult decision. And I think we're kind of getting there.
I was just, sorry, can I really quickly on that one, because I think that there is a communality in the Indian experience of family that I grew up with.
Yes.
in terms of my making the choice to be honest with my parents, it would have been impossible if I didn't have the support of my brother and if I didn't have the support of my cousins.
Yes.
When that support is there in the family, it makes it so much easier.
So much easier.
It doesn't make it, it's still hard, it's still difficult, but there, you have support within the family, and the family structure is one of the structures that I think in a place like India defines who you are.
Because if you're ostracized by the people who love you the most, I mean, what more can there be?
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably the worst thing a person can live with, a decision that the people who are around you, the people who love you don't accept, is the toughest part of undergoing a change.
I have a question for Shobhaa. I'm from the publishing industry. I'm not comfortable with the term queer to describe homosexuals, lesbians, gays, etc. because queer means strange. So shouldn't we try and get this term deleted?
I think
this is for Shobhaa.
Well, it's a term that has been around. I don't think it's used much anymore. It's not in the mainstream at all. No one talks in that. No one refers to queer.
We have the Queer Pride Parade.
Correct. It's something that is accepted by the gay and lesbian community themselves. So, I mean, I'm not in a position of authority to challenge their right to define themselves as queer. It's their call, it's their decision.
I know that they're not comfortable, but they're just subjected to accept it.
Could I know it's for Shobhaa, but sometimes that word has become a shorthand for two reasons, I think. That there is, sometimes what you do is you take a term of abuse, a term of abuse, and you throw it back, you turn it around and you throw it back to the society. And you say, you know what, I am this and I'm actually proud of it. So I think that was happening with it. Also, we are increasingly aware that sexuality is not just gay and lesbian or heterosexual, that there is a fluidity, and I think that was why people were using queer as a way of being able to include all those contradictions, all those ambiguities, all those experiences of sexuality. Is it problematic? Yes, but I do think that's why it became part of a way of talking about gender and sexuality.
My question is that it's great that we're trying to redefine gender norms in itself, but don't you think a movement like feminism, it restricts or like makes it difficult for women to have feminine qualities, right? For instance, in popular media representation, it's mostly like a strong independent woman is mostly shown as a corporate woman who goes for a job and has qualities that men traditionally have had, right? It's never shown that strong independent woman is a housewife by choice and is still a feminist, right? And these movements still go ahead and look down upon these housewives who are housewives by choice and women and feminists in itself, right?
So what is the question again? That was a statement. We agree with you.
Yeah, you do.
I agree with you, yeah.
Thank you.
One on this side, perhaps. One over there.
Is it acceptable for men to cry?
What do you think? Do you cry?
He doesn't.
I don't think so. We have to be men.
Okay. You're missing something if you don't cry, my friend.
Yeah.
Try it. It'll make you feel so much better.
You haven't been
Tears
listening.
are not gender driven. I mean, a woman cries, a man cries, it's okay.
And
Try it.
it's good for the eyes.
It's very good for the eyes.
Okay, time for just one more question.
My question is for Shobhaa. We were talking about the title Dance Like a Man, and you're wearing the symbol of Devi. And that's the thought that I got. Isn't it ironic that the attributes of power are associated with men and arts are associated with women, when we come from a culture where the lord of dance is Shiva or Nataraj, and in the Durga Saptashati, the demons that couldn't be slayed by all the devas were slayed by Devi.
Yeah. What is the question?
Isn't it ironic that now these attributes have turned on their head?
Ironic, yes, but also I think worth a round of applause. If we have managed to turn them on there, I'm not sure we have.
Okay, we have time for just one more question.
Guys, a question is a statement with a question mark at the end, just to help you along.
Okay, definitely a question.
Good, good.
As I've been listening today, I haven't heard a positive description of the masculine aspect. I've heard negative descriptions, rage, aggression, violence against women, and I've heard men being able to exhibit feminine aspects. But how would you describe the positive aspects of masculinity?
Good question.
Well, I think the three of us here are very nice guys. That's to begin with. Then I will hand it over to him.
I think the...
no, I think we better get Christos to do.
You can...
Yes?
The positive aspects of masculinity is manliness, he says. But Christos, I think we need to have your
I was going to say, and maybe I didn't argue it or make it clear enough, that I think I learned certain aspects of how to be a man from my father that had to do with actually teaching me that crying was okay. But there was, but also teaching me that there were boundaries about who, that the world did not revolve around me. It revolved around me for him as his son in his house, but that I had to have certain ways of respect when I left the house. Certain forms of taking responsibility that I'm really glad I learnt from my father, that not everything was going to come given to me on a plate. I think that those are aspects of masculinity that are really important, that fathers should teach their children, not only their sons, their children, I think.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. We could be here for another half hour. There's so many more questions. Just go refigure yourselves. Thank you very much.
For such a riveting session, let's give a very warm round of applause to Mukul Deva, Christos Tsiolkas, Shobhaa and Ashok Ferrey. There will be signings, so please do go to the book tent, pick up a book, and you'll be able to meet the authors in the far left corner here at the Rajnigandha front lawns. All 4 authors will be signing, so please do